Alright, good people, today we can finally take the reps of Intel's new mainstream architecture, codenamed Panther Lake. And after months of teasing and several previews, I cannot wait to go over all the numbers with you guys. And I could make this a very short video, since, spoiler alert, Intel pretty much delivered exactly as promised. So we get faster cores in both multi and single core scenarios, better efficiency and a much faster iGPU for both gamers and power users alike. The first notebook in the studio is once again the refreshed Zenbook Duo, which allows us to do a more or less apples-to-apples comparison to last year's Arrow Lake version. And thanks to the new chip and of course the overall redesign, Asus's dual-screen 14-incher is so much more practical and at the same time much more capable, being able to run demanding AAA games or for lighter workloads keep one screen going for roughly 17 hours. So without any further ado, let's get into it, since we have a lot to talk about. As always, let's start with specs for this beauty right here. And the star of the show today is, of course, the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H, alongside the integrated Intel Arc B390, which will be the fastest GPU part for the new generation. On the memory side, you get 32 gigs running at some pretty insane speeds, and for now it seems like this is also the max config you can get, which is a bit of a bummer, but more about that later. All of your files will find their new home on a 2TB SSD in our sample and a pair of OLEDs, which of course put the Duo in the Zenbook name, are of the higher res variety and refresh up to 144Hz for a fluid daily navigating experience or smooth gameplay. For 2026, Asus also bets exclusively on Ceraluminum for the chassis, which has also been redesigned from the ground up. So while it's slightly heftier than its predecessor, the new material makes it a bit lighter. If it's enough to really make a difference, that will be subjective, but considering that you get a faster laptop with a bigger battery, I guess we can still call it a win. I was slightly on the fence when it comes to design at first, since during a preview event, when I first saw this one, I kinda felt like I prefer the more industrial design of the 2025 Duo. But having spent some time with the update, well, it's growing on me. Objectively, there is nothing to complain about overall quality and stability here, and despite the dual screen construction, it does not feel like you're having to live with any compromises. If you are not familiar with the overall concept of the Duo, when opening up the 14-incher for the first time, you are greeted with a pretty conventional, if quite hefty looking laptop. But if you were to remove the magnetically attached keyboard though, the second screen comes on in an instant, effectively doubling your available screen real estate. And while we are on the subject of the keyboard, despite this one being basically a standalone unit, you still get some generous travel and solid overall tactility. And the trackpad also works without a problem as well. So again, you do not have to deal with any usability compromises for the Duo being as flexible as it is. In addition to the keyboard, Asus also added a new pen, the Pro Pen 3.0, and that one improves on its predecessor in every way and comes bundled with this little charging crate, and not only works on the new Duo, but also on last year's version and on my P16. Unfortunately, I did not have enough time to test it in depth, but since it will also be part of the new ProArt family, so that means for the new PX13 and PZ13, I'm sure I will be able to rectify that situation sooner rather than later. First impressions are solid though, and whether for note-taking or photo editing, it should do the trick if you do not want to carry an additional external solution. As per usual, you got quite a few options on how to set up the Duo, and thanks to the new hinge, the screens are not only a lot closer together compared to the last gen version, but they also sit flush against each other, which is especially handy if you use this one vertically, which wasn't quite possible before and makes the whole thing quite a bit more practical. And talking about practicality, Asus has moved one of the USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports to the right for added charging flexibility, and you also get a USB-A and HDMI for some pretty robust connectivity options. Alright, let's talk displays. And contrary to the old Duo, Asus acts the Full HD option, which is alright if you ask me, since you would probably want the higher res panels anyways. And as you will see in our battery testing, Panther Lake's efficiency gains and the bigger battery are more than able to offset any potential compromises in this regard. Everything about both panels is pretty fantastic as per usual. Sure, these aren't the brightest OLEDs around, but they improve considerably on the predecessor with around 500 nits in SDR and the advertised 1000 nits peak with the activated brightness sensor, while it's just about 640 nits when regulating brightness manually. That's a bit odd, and I hope Asus can fix it with a software update in the future. Despite both panels being pen-enabled touchscreens, you do not get any of the grain from the touch layer, which is great to see. And when it comes to contrast, factory calibration and color gamut coverage, there's simply nothing to complain about here. For the creators, Asus also adds additional pre-calibrated presets, which makes the Duo the perfect dual-screen creative companion, no matter if we are talking photo or video editing or other visual-centric professions like in graphic design, for example. For the gamers among you, you can enjoy the super snappy response times, the already mentioned 144Hz refresh rate and the VRR support between 48 and 144Hz for a tear-free gaming experience. PWM is also relatively high for a standard OLED, but as always, if you are sensitive towards flicker, you might want to give this one a try before pulling the trigger. So that would be the Zenbook, but what about the CPU at the heart of it all? Well, let's talk about the Panther Lake X9. At its core, the new chip is betting on Intel's established hybrid design, all manufactured in their state-of-the-art 18A process consisting of 4 P-cores, 8 E-cores and 4 low-power E-cores, a 50 TOPS NPU and the GPU with 12 Xe3 cores being supplied by TSMC. In the Zenbook, the new Panther Lake flagship can take advantage of up to 64 watts in short bursts before it levels out at about 46 watts. And as you can see from our testing, you can enjoy the same performance potential on battery, which is very nice to see. In our CPU rating, a collection of both multi and single core tests, we do see a very nice bump in performance against both Arrow Lake and especially against Lunar Lake, which is to be expected given the higher core counts here. In Cinebench 24, we can see that the CPU part of the X9 is about on par with the M5 in the MacBook Pro 14, at least in the multi-core performance, while Apple still reigns supreme if your workloads only need a single thread. Strix Halo in the Z13 from last year is ahead in multi-core, but that is also to be expected considering the higher wattage the chip was running at and that we are basically dealing with 16 P-cores which are all hyper-threading capable. Compared to the regular AMD CPUs, Intel's new flagship is offering comparable multi-core performance and improved single-core results. As always, this is just the first of probably many laptops we will test with the new silicon in the months to come, so keep in mind things can move around a bit depending on how much power manufacturers are going to feed to the CPUs and how robust the cooling solutions are going to be. So that's performance, and things are looking quite solid without really reinventing the wheel here, so let's have a look at efficiency. And in single core, we are about on par with Lunar Lake and improving quite nicely up on Arrow Lake and AMD's Strix Point, while both Qualcomm and especially Apple are still quite a bit ahead. If you need all the cores though, things actually do scale quite nicely, and at 20 to 28 watts, the X9 can almost rival Apple here, while leaving the x86 competition pretty much in the dust. And if you want to dive deeper into our numbers, please check out our detailed performance analysis on the website. We have a lot of additional results for this one right here. Circling back to the Zenbook, the Duo is an extremely snappy system and can handle switching between orientations or between dual or single screen use without a problem. And once I get to spend more time with a proper review system for a little bit, I will also try to use the new platform a bit more in-depth for our content creation workflows. But I have high hopes here even for video editing, since I just finished our Omnibook 14 Ultra video on a pre-production unit of that laptop without a problem. So the overall platform seems to be a great fit for power users as well. It would just be quite interesting how much RAM you should have at your disposal, since I could see 32 gigs become a limiting factor once you need a ton of system and video memory. But let's finally talk about the Arc B390, and if you have seen our CES coverage, Intel promised about RTX 4050 level performance. And they weren't kidding, as long as we are not talking about max wattage variants of Nvidia's last-gen entry-level GPU. But if we compare things to similarly thin lifestyle-focused notebooks, the B390 can easily keep pace with older dedicated solutions, while Nvidia's new 50 series GPUs or AMD's Strix Halo variants are quite a bit ahead. Compared to similarly positioned SoCs, both from Intel, Team Red or even Qualcomm, Team Blue mops the floor with what was available before and even beats Apple's latest M5 by quite a considerable margin in our synthetic testing. Actual gaming performance looks equally impressive, especially once again compared to what Intel themselves had on offer before with Lunar Lake and Arrow Lake, and AMD does also not stand a chance here, and the X9 and hopefully even the slightly lower tiered X7 might change the game. Literally, when it comes to how we think about casual gaming, since you can run pretty much everything in medium to high settings in Full HD, while even ultra settings are not really a problem for a whole bunch of titles. It may not always be quite enough for 60 FPS, especially if we talk about the latest AAA titles, but for those you can easily drop the settings and you will still be able to run everything, which is not always the case for Intel's competitors. If you want to boost your FPS numbers, you still got XeSS at your disposal, and while we still have quite a bit of testing to do, and I definitely need to spend more time with a finished system, what I have seen in AC Shadows, for example, looks quite promising. I started out with medium settings in the Sandbox balanced mode and got around 32 FPS, which you can improve to about 40 FPS with XeSS in balanced without any immediately noticeable visual sacrifices. And with frame generation we finally got things close or above 60 FPS. Again, without any of the artifacts you can sometimes see when betting on AI generated frames. And since it might take some time before all games are updated to the latest suite of XeSS, you can override some settings in the driver, and using 4x MFG for Assassin's Creed, you can easily smooth out your FPS experience even more. And I know, I may sound like a broken record, but the fact that I can enjoy one of the most demanding single-player games available right now without a dedicated GPU on a laptop that was not specifically made for gamers, well, the times we live in. I also tried Fortnite as my go-to FPS title of choice, and in the game's performance mode with 80% of the native 2880 by 1800 resolution and a mix of medium to epic settings, I was able to easily max out the 144Hz native refresh rate, which is again quite impressive considering what kind of machine we are talking about here. Unfortunately, all of that additional performance comes at the cost of fan noise, at least in the Zenbook, and once you push the slim dual-screen laptop, you will definitely hear it. So it will be quite interesting how this will translate to other notebooks betting on the same silicon here. Thankfully, the standard mode gives you pretty much the same overall performance experience while being a lot quieter at the same time. So please enjoy our noise samples across various workloads and in the Zenbook's different performance modes. The Duo speakers are also quite alright, even though they cannot quite rival the best of the best what's currently out there. But as always, hear for yourself and let me know what you think down below. Alright, that leaves us with battery life, and things are really looking good here for the Zenbook. Just keep in mind Asus also put a massive 99 watt-hour battery in this one, so any improvements are not solely because of Panther Lake. But considering we tested the predecessor with full HD panels, it's also not just because of the additional juice. So 17 hours in our Wi-Fi test with a single screen at 150 nits, or still almost 12 when using both, or 11 hours with one of the OLEDs at max brightness, or still a very respectable 8 hours when using all of the Zenbook's dual screen glory is pretty awesome. If you rather enjoy more than 21 hours of video playback, you can do that too, and if you stress the system completely, you need to recharge this puppy after 2 hours, which is also not too shabby if you ask me. Oh, and by the way, while we talk about charging, over here in the EU, the Zenbook comes without a charger, and to get everything its internals are capable of, you would want at least a 90 watt variant. If you should be asked to supply your own charger for a laptop costing this much, well, I guess that's a very different conversation altogether. And that is everything I have about the 2026 Zenbook Duo being powered by Intel's latest and greatest, the Core Ultra X9 388H with the integrated Arc B390. And if you ask me, both the dual screen laptop and the Silicon beating at its heart are a clear win. For the Zenbook, you will have a very hard time finding a dual screen laptop that is so well and thoughtfully engineered right now. And it's not just a gimmick, but with the new hinge, the new chassis and the freely usable keyboard, this one is as flexible as it's practical. And thanks to the new Intel processor, it got even more capable, be it for all of your productivity needs, casual gaming or even more advanced content creation workflows. And all of that without really sacrificing battery life. Of course, this one is very expensive, coming with 2 OLEDs and all, and I hope we will get prices for a regular laptop soon, betting on the new Silicon, since it will help us quite a bit to really judge the overall value proposition of Panther Lake as a whole. But for now, if you're looking for a dual screen laptop, well, I guess this is it. And that should already be it for today, my friends. Again, please make sure to check out both our written review and our detailed Panther Lake analysis on the website as well. We have a lot more data for the new platform. Thanks a ton for watching. Please leave a like and sub on your way out if you felt informed and entertained. My name is Alex, you have been absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.